Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we ask guests to tell us your story. Hello there, this is Dr. James W. Smith, your host. We seek to transform lives by encouraging and inspiring. Someone encouraged and inspired this host, a former lawyer, gambler, inmate, and his life was transformed. The same can happen to you. So when you listen to any of the Deal by Me podcasts, please support this podcast with a donation or a monthly recurring amount for as little as $3. If you're viewing any of the podcasts on YouTube, please subscribe. To supporters of this podcast, we say thank you. Check out my encouraging, inspiring, and transforming books. I'm available for speaking engagements, in person and virtual seminars, so please contact me through my website, www.dealbyme.com. I have with me Brad Chandler, a successful entrepreneur who dedicates his life with passion, helping others break free from their past, overcoming limited beliefs, and creating the life and relationships they desire and deserve. Brad has transformed his own life and is here to share his powerful insights with podcast listeners. Brad, it's good to have you share with the Dear by Me podcast today. And I would ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're located as the interview is taking place.
Yeah, thanks for having me, James. I'm in Fairfax, Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. And I have a successful real estate company that has been running for about 22 years. It runs without me. I've done 4,500 house flips where I buy a house, fix it up, and resell it. And so I made millions. I lost millions, but made more millions than I lost, and still wasn't happy. And about 3.5 years ago, trying to get my son help for anxiety, I figured out that I had some issues from my childhood, and in an Airbnb bedroom in Park City, Utah, my life forever changed. And so now I give that gift back to other people.
Hmm. I love that, Brad, because that's kind of my story also, having practiced law, messing up, doing something silly and crazy. And then I realized, look, your life has been all messed up, and now you want to really kind of help somebody else not to go down the same path that you've gone through. So I feel you. I know exactly where you're coming from. I read your profile, and very, very interesting. As a matter of fact, you are the kind of guest that I've always tried to have on my podcast because I want to, you know, be encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. So let me just talk a little bit with you, ask you a couple of questions that hopefully will be helpful to listeners of this podcast. You have been a successful real estate broker, and you just shared that in your opening, and of course, made lots of money. But somehow, I gather that has not been very fulfilling, and that you uh, decided that you want to do something that was much more fulfilling. Am I correct in that
Well, the point that you're
statement?
yeah, point that you're correct is I didn't desire anything because I didn't know anything was wrong.
Oh,
I thought that, smoking weed every night, drinking, two marriages that didn't work out, kids with behavioral problems, not super healthy. At least my lifestyle wasn't always super healthy. I just kind of explained them all away. Like, who doesn't
mm,
smoke some weed? Who doesn't have, I picked the wrong two ladies. That's
mm,
why I got divorced. It wasn't my fault.
mm.
So I wasn't even out looking for anything different. I thought my life was okay. I didn't feel like super fulfilled. I didn't know why God put me here. And then I tried to get my son help for anxiety, and everything changed. I now know why God put me here, and it's to be on podcasts like this and to help people transform their lives because I literally have found the secret to life and happiness and success. And it's not as hard as most people think.
So, what was that? I assume in talking with you, there was a pivotal moment that made you realize you needed to change your life. Is that basically where you're coming from when you state what you have just
No,
said?
there was no moment. What happened was I was in the process of trying to get my son help for anxiety. I was on a call like this, and the performance coach said, "You have a tick." And I'm like, "What is she talking about?" Like I literally thought I had a tick on me or something. She said, "No, you blink like crazy when you talk about your childhood. You may have some unresolved childhood trauma that's affecting your son's anxiety." And I'm like, "Me?" I was like, "No way. I've been a single dad. I take him around the country for golf trips. I'm always there for breakfast. I drop them off at the bus stop. I'm there for dinner. Like me, no way." But I'm like, okay, if you think you're the performance coach, that I need some work to help my son, I'll do it. So, in the process of trying to help my son, I went through this weekend experience with this ex Navy SEAL. And in that 3 hour window of laying in a bed in an Airbnb outside of Park City, Utah, that's when the profound change took place. I was like, oh my gosh, all these years, 47 years of me feeling not enough and chasing women and boats and cars and millions of dollars. I was like, there was nothing ever wrong with me. I didn't need to prove anything. And that's when everything in my life changed.
You're interesting, Brad. I love you. Uh, this is a awesome conversation. I guess it's because I feel you. I feel exactly where you are, where you've been. It's so connected to where I've come from, practicing law, thought I was very successful, doing well, and then all of a sudden into gambling and find my life messed all up. And now, you know, pastoring, well, pastored for 32 years, now doing this podcast for over a year and a half. So it's interesting talking to you, and I'm just excited. And I know listeners of this podcast would be really, really amazed at where you are and what you're doing. The question that I have for you is, you know, I guess I want to know what are some of the key exercises uh, or techniques you use to help others rewrite their limiting beliefs and find true freedom? Because you've done that. You're there.
Yeah.
You're doing the
Yeah.
podcast, Yeah. So you're sharing with us. So what is it? Can you share some of those key
Yeah,
exercise or
yeah,
technique?
I absolutely. It's an amazing question, but I want to touch on something you said because I've never, ever, ever shared this publicly with anybody. And you were saying how you feel connected and love me. I love you too, because of our stories are so similar. And you said gambling, and at first I was like, well, that's not me. And then it just popped into my head. There were several years in my life where I was actually a bookie. I was actually taking bets from my friends. And now looking back, why would I ever do that? Because it was a lot of
Hmm.
work.
Hmm.
It was my suffering self, my injured self thinking, "Oh my gosh, if I can make like 10 or 20 or $50,000, maybe I can make this a little bigger. I'm going to be worthy." So anyway, you get the privilege. I don't know if it's called a privilege. I've never shared them. A couple of my close friends know, but no, I've never said that publicly. And it's amazing. It's just another thing in my life that I was trying to think that was going to bring me external happiness. And anyway, so your question, James, is how do we transform these folks? We actually
Hmm.
use hypnosis. It's one of
Okay.
our many, many tools. And why do we use hypnosis? Here's a drop the mic moment. If you're listening, stop the car, turn off whatever you're doing, and listen to what I'm about to say, because I'm about to share with you the secret to happiness and secret to life, both happiness and success. Every negative behavior you have in your life, and for James and I, that was drinking, that was gambling, that was being a bookie, that was getting divorced, that was shutting down with the spouses, kids with the behavioral problems, whatever it is, that number one is not your fault. Number two, it's your mind. It's your mind providing a solution for something that it thinks is even worse and more scary.
Mm.
So the negative behavior that you can't stop, it's because your brain is saying, no, we're not going to stop this because if we stop this, things are going to get even worse. So what we do is we do a deep dive into the subconscious mind and we figure out what are these things driving the negative behavior. And when we find them, James, 100% of the time, they are an untruth that was
Mm,
formed likely in childhood when your needs weren't met or you were in a stressful situation or a traumatic situation. Dad doesn't show up to my games. Dad beats me. Dad makes fun of me. There's constant fighting in my house. I see my dad hit my mom. We have no money. We're poor. The
mm,
kid comes up with a story because he has to or she has to survive. So the story is I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. If I'm my authentic self, love will be taken from me. Whatever the story is, it's an individual by individual basis. So we find that. We then go and we show the brain that it's an untruth, and boom, 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 a mismatch detector goes off. And your brain says, wait, I cannot hold two completely conflicting thoughts. So what happens is the truth absolutely overwrites the untruth called through neuroplasticity. You are literally, we rewrite your neural pathways in your brain. James, guess what happens to the negative behavior that your whole life you hadn't been able to stop?
mm.
It vanishes, it goes away. There's no drugs needed. There's no 3 decades of therapy like me or 50 different marriage counseling sessions that I went through. All it is getting to the root cause because nobody was born an addicted gambler. No one was born with depression, anxiety, eating disorders, a chaotic business, lack of self love. No one was born that way. It was all learned. So if it was learned, let's go back to the source and relearn it. The problem in Western medicine is everyone wants to focus on these negative behaviors. Oh, you've got anxiety, you drink too much. Well, let's do some breathing exercises. Let's teach you to drive a different way home so you don't go to the liquor store. No, none of that shit works until you get to the source of what created it in the first place.
Mm. Wow. Look, I don't know what to say. You got me spellbound here. I am really just amazed. It's very interesting, intriguing. You
James,
know,
it's a reason that our prisons are full, our
mm-hmm,
hospitals are full, why we have an obesity epidemic, why there's a 50% first marriage divorce rate and a 72% third divorce rate, why we
mm-hmm.
have wars going on, why we have sex trafficking. Everything comes down to this. These folks are hurt. They're hurt people because they are being driven by an underlying untruth about some inadequacy about themselves that's never true. It never was true. But it served them as a child to protect them and make it be a better day. Because listen, if your dad is beating you, like my dad, or he's making fun of you, or he's not around, if you can internalize that and say it's my fault, guess what? All you have to do is be better, and then dad will start loving you. But if you look over at dad and you go, oh, that's dad's problem, then you're completely screwed because this is the guy that's keeping you alive. You depend on him or your mom, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we always, as kids, internalize it. And it works for us at 6 years old, but it destroys you at 36, 46, 66 as an adult.
Wow. Well said. I hear you. I hear you very well. Very well. Yeah, it's kind of like understanding that don't put it on anybody else. Take responsibility for it yourself. Is that kind of what you might be saying?
Let me say this. When I said it's not your fault, sometimes people are like, what you say you shouldn't take responsibility for it? No. For
Mm-hmm.
47 years, it wasn't my fault. Then I was given the gift to go through this exercise. Your listeners right now are given the gift of awareness right now. If you want to know if you have these underlying beliefs that are ruling your life and your marriage and your behavior and your business that's in chaos, in 3 minutes, you can figure it out. If you go to unlocklimitlessyou.com/quiz, take the quiz, it will tell you now that you
Mm.
have awareness. Now, I do think it's your responsibility to do something for yourself, for your health, and for your family. But until you know, I'm a pretty smart guy. I had an undergraduate degree, I had an MBA from Wisconsin. For 47 years, I was always trying to get better, but I had no idea, James, that there was this underlying thing ruling my marriages and my behavior and my business losing. I lost $9 million. I had no idea. The second that I figured it out, I changed everything. So it's not your fault and it's not your responsibility. But as soon as you hear this episode, now it is your responsibility. You got to go do something.
Okay. You've created a obviously a proven process for transformation, and I hear you. And it seems like it's all based upon your own experience. So, what are the first steps someone should take if they feel trapped by their past and are looking to create a life, of happiness and fulfillment? Uh,
Yeah,
am, am I asking a
it's
question
an
that makes
awesome,
sense?
100%. First
Okay.
of all, you can take the quiz just to get self-awareness, but what you have to do, whether you call me up or go to your local therapist or whoever, local therapists aren't always the greatest because they focus on these symptoms over here where I go to the root cause. If you want to fix mental pain or physical pain, if you don't go to the source, you're never going to fix it long term. So let's say you don't want to work with me. You don't like me. You don't have any money, whatever it is. You can do this on your own. It's not easy, but you need to get really, really, really introspective. You need to meditate. You need to do yoga. You need to get in a quiet place and you need to just think about your childhood and think about the things that happened and think about the most traumatic or stressful events in your childhood and then replay them and ask yourself, what were you saying about yourself and life and the world in those things? And you're probably going to be like me. Oh, my dad was hitting me. I was likely saying I deserve this because otherwise my dad wouldn't do it. So I must be a bad boy. So therefore, I'm not good enough. And then think, okay, what are my problems in my life now? Okay, I drink. If I didn't drink, what would I have to face? And whatever the answer is likely that underlying untruth. Let's say that you get terribly scared about going on stage. Okay, remember that's your brain protecting from something worse. So I'd go back and I'd be like, my dad made fun of me as a kid. What if I get up on stage and I mess up and someone makes fun of me? You got to remember, we've been on this, our brains have been on this planet for 6 million years. And
Mhm.
98% of that time we lived in tribes. If the tribe leader, AKA my dad, is making fun of me, as a tribe member, I'm going to think, I wonder if he's going to kick me out of the tribe. What happens when you get kicked out of the tribe? You die. You die. So
Hmm.
all of our issues are based on this unconscious need to survive that we don't even know is running in the background. That's what's happening. So you just have to get really introspective and do the work to figure out what's driving you and then convince the brain that it's an untruth.
Brad, you are amazing. But I feel it, what you're saying. I feel it. It's awesome and it makes so much sense. I am, I'm a retired pastor of a church for 32 years. And
Wow.
I started doing this about 6 months before I decided to retire because I wanted to keep my ministry going by actually doing something that I thought would be encouraging, inspiring, and transforming. So all the guests that I agree to bring on are individuals that have great stories and who I feel can share something that will be encouraging, inspiring, and maybe hopefully transforming to guests of this podcast. And so, what I want to ask of you is if there's someone listening to this podcast uh, who is exhibiting a negative behavior or might feel that uh, it isn't necessarily their fault, what would you say to them that's encouraging, inspiring, and maybe transforming? Is there a
Yeah.
word that you would say?
So it can, I don't know that it can be said in a word. If you
Okay.
listen to what I said earlier, go back and replay that section of the podcast because whatever negative behavior that you have in your life, again, it's just your brain doing what it thinks is the right thing.
Okay.
It's unconscious. We have to bring the unconscious to the conscious state. You are a miracle. The fact that the sperm came together with the egg and you were born, you are a miracle. Despite what you are going through right now, no matter how grave your suffering is, you were put on this earth for a massive mission. things can get a lot better and can get a lot better very quickly. I often take clients in 5 weeks. Our program is 5 weeks and take them from a lack of self love to extreme self love, and everything in their life changes. So don't buy the story. I'm actually wearing a shirt that says, put down what you're carrying. What you're carrying is the burden of this untruth that is substantially harming your life. Put it down. It's not your fault, but now that you have awareness, take the steps and put it down. Once you do put it down, your massive mission, your purpose in life often comes because when you're running from the tiger, when you've got this untruth, you are in a fight or flight state most of your life. So you've got a tiger chasing you, right? You're just trying to survive. How in the world can you, one, make a good business decision, two, parent your kids properly, or three, figure out why was I put on this planet? But if you do the work I'm telling you about, it's not just one area of your life that will change. Every single area of your life, your relationships, your health, your financial abundance, everything will change.
Hmm. Well said. Well said. Listeners, I'm trusting that you've taken all of this in because this is some very good information for you. Don't go into place because I got just a few more questions or dialogue that I want to have with Brad. But first of all, I want to ask Brad if there are listeners who would like to learn more about you, what you do, how they can contact you, and what have you. Could you share that information with listeners at this time?
Of course, unlock limitless you, you.com/Brad has all of my contact information. If you're
Okay.
suffering, it literally has my cell phone number. Pick up the phone and call me. It has our self love quiz. It has all of my social media channels that I put stuff out on every day. And it has a link to our podcast. If you like this information, there's a lot more of it. I've got over 100 episodes, and the name of the podcast is called How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. And that link can be found at unlocklimitlessyou.com/Brad.
Okay. Thank you so very much. All right. Couple more questions. I note that, you've have had both extreme success uh, and some deep personal challenges. Being an entrepreneur, having been one, what advice would you give to entrepreneurs who are struggling, with self-doubt, feeling like they're not enough despite their achievements? And there are a lot of folks who are like that. I used to kind of be like that. And I
Yeah.
know there are other folks. So what advice would you give to them?
So many entrepreneurs get in business, including myself, because they think one day down the road, when I can make $5 or $10 million, I'm going to find this worthiness and this inner peace and this happiness.
Wow.
And the fact of the matter is, it will never come if you don't do the work. The irony is that today, in the next 30 days, 5 weeks, you can literally find the state that you think you're going to find with $10 million in the bank. And when you do that today, the chances of you finding more success go through the roof because you're not making money to try to prove your worth. You're actually trying to make an impact. So that's for most entrepreneurs, but specifically for people who have had success and still feel like an imposter, still feel like they're not enough, and nothing will ever be enough. This is my shirt. Put down what you're carrying. Do the work that I just figured out. Figure out those underlying untruths. And then you've got the money because if you're successful, but who cares about the money if you're feeling like crap, right? So just do the work. And then guess what? You get to have the money and have great connected relationships and personal and financial abundance. Like you can have it all in this life.
Hmm, hmm. Wow. What powerful sayings. I don't hardly know what to say. You've just been amazing. It's and I feel it as those old sayings say, I feel it deep down in my bones. It's your conversation with me has been very, very inspiring, challenging, and just something that I feel is if I am feeling it, then I really believe listeners of this podcast of feeling it. Now you mentioned, you know, that unresolved childhood trauma affected your life. Uh, and you talked about how it did it in different ways, from your marriage to your business decisions. So my last question to you is, can you share how you discovered these hidden beliefs and what steps you took, to overcome them?
Yeah. So in that 3 hours in that Airbnb bedroom, the gentleman asked me to go back to times in my childhood where I felt stress or trauma or had no control. And no
Mhm.
control doesn't mean like I was out of control. It means that control was taken from me. And we looked at a series of events in my life. And then he asked me what were the meanings. And the meanings that came from those was something wrong was wrong with Brad. And I wasn't enough.
Hmm.
And then he created a recording, or I created it. We now after hypnosis will create a recording for our clients that they'll listen to for 30 days at night as they're going to sleep and they're in a hypnotic state that will literally reinforce the neural pathways. So that's what I did. Now I know that I'm enough. And if I ever get in a triggered state, which is hardly any time anymore, like I used to be mad all the time. Now I'm hardly ever mad. If I do, I immediately know it's the old Brad going back to, because remember, a thought creates an emotion, and the emotion creates a behavior. It's how we survived. A
Hmm.
lion's coming at you, you get scared, and it causes you to run. So the thought for me, anytime I feel a negative emotion, is I think about it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling sad because I'm thinking I'm not enough, and this person's just disrespecting me. So I'm like, but wait, am I enough? Is it true that I'm not enough? And I say, no, it is true. If you were a pastor, probably Jesus is, I think his most powerful statement ever was, the truth shall set you free.
Hmm.
I now live in the truth that I am enough. And so these negative emotions can't grip me or take hold on me like they used to for days at a time.
Brad, you've been exciting, and I've truly enjoyed the interview with you today. This is amazing, and I want to let you know how much I do appreciate you sharing your story with listeners of this podcast.
Thank
I know they're obviously exciting to just hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much. That was
And,
amazing.
and there you have it, Brad Chandler sharing with us today and with some awesome information. And until next time, peace and blessings be with each of you.